dun, dun, dun. Hey everybody, how's it going? Okay, so welcome back. Superteam Germany, Creators Guild, art, handshake AI, art meets AI, art cooperates with AI. I know it's cheesy to say creator's journey, but quite honestly, I think everybody is sort of, navigating this in their own way. It's weird territory. It's been weird territory for like a few years now. Meylen, hi Meylen, how are you? And there she is. Everybody's here. Okay, amazing. All right, in that case, I'm going to turn off our wonderful elevator music and remove the curtain and say hi to everybody. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Superteam Germany, Creators Guild. We've got Frank all the way from the beautiful city of Seattle in the state of Washington. I'm just going to introduce you in a tiny little way. Frank, you're a professor. You're a professor of painting and drawing. You have a ton of experience, of course, and I think one of the things that stuck with me when I was asking you, like, so you're teaching the youngins these days, teaching art, and I think you got some questions about AI, and you're just sort of like, ugh. But like in a very lovely way. I'm always super happy to hear everything Frank has to say about art and life and everything. So thank you so much for joining. I know it's really early over there. Travi, tried to get you on the show a few times. You're a busy guy, but in terms of AI, you're like a crazy wizard. Like the things that Travi gets up to with AI options these days are wild. And I would highly recommend tuning into everything he does because it is mind-blowing. So thank you so much for joining. I know you just came back from France and are settled into. By the way, hot story of the day. It's really hot in Berlin, and maybe I think under normal circumstances that would be okay. Except Germany, Berlin, we don't have air conditioning, so people are just suffering. It's just ridiculous. Ideally, you should be swimming, but to even get to a lake is brutal. Anna. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on board. Anna, you're coming off of curating an AI art exhibition, which I was a part of. It was fascinating. It was my first AI oriented exhibition, and I can't wait to hear everything you have to say about that. It's this brave new world territory that it's fascinating and weird and just starting. Meylen, you are so busy that I barely see you anymore, but you're a founder, you're a creative, you've joined us in our creative circles, and I know you have a ton of good advice about everything, including some tools that, regardless of whether one is an artist or not, people can get into. So thank you all. I'll do a quick round and let everybody introduce themselves because that's my version of you, and I'd love it if you just give me your version of you for a little minute. So Frank, are you there? Hello, sir.
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Yeah. So you are. I introduced you. I was a professor of drawing and painting, but you have decades of experience as an artist, and here you are in 2025. What's set the stage for what that looks like as an educator and also a creative, of course, in terms of the new kinds of wild world of technological tools we are encountering.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief because as a art professor, college professor, I tend to talk quite a bit. But I think the state of multidisciplinarity, multimedia, like the true sense of it, making work that is multivalent in a lot of ways. I think that's the sort of the baseline now. I think that I find it to be really invigorating to be around students that not only are interested in discussing the media or the medium through their work, but it's fundamentally autobiographical,
Mm.
and so I think that I think it's an interesting point. You sort of said a couple times that that the sort of AI and sort of digital realms are so sort of fresh and new, but I don't know if it's the Pacific Northwest and Microsoft and all that stuff, but I think that I think there is a sense of it being sort of part of de rigueur, at this point in especially with where the students are. And in fact, much like in my own sort of ancient history, I think there's sort of factions sort of forming between students that are going to learn how to use Adobe number one,
Mm.
back in the 90s,
Mm.
and and kids that are sort of interested in developing their work online specifically versus analog work specifically. Um, in terms of my own sort of path, I mean, I try to sort of I'm kind of a dabbler, right? I've tried to do different things. I've made a couple digital pieces here and there, um, but as the gray beard will show, I'm sort of the old man of the sea, and tend to sort of be more of a traditionalist with my own work.
I mean, these are very important things. Yeah, I value. I think more and more these days I value people who have existed pre-internet. Me myself being one of them, just for the sake of like anchoring, grounding, perspective, attention span. But yeah, that I get before I even go further. I've been abroad for way too long. There were two words that you said that I didn't actually understand. Derringer, and
No,
multivalent.
multivalent. Oh yeah, like having different different existing with different sort of positions,
Okay,
right? So
okay,
like
okay.
you're sort of like you're eco-friendly but also recyclable.
Okay,
Like
okay.
they're sort of different. They're sort of different things that that maybe come to the same place.
Thank you, sir. I might ask these questions again. Basically, Travi, you like I said, you do crazy things. Maybe give us a little intro to Travi and what Travi's been up to, and yeah, I mean, you got a crazy process, and the crazy process comes with crazy outcomes. Yeah, go for it.
I mean, basically, I've been messing around with these tools for as long as they've been around. Like when DALL-E first came out, I was playing around with the first version of it, Midjourney as well, and just kind of continuing to mess with them every day since then, and trying to find out what the best tools are that are coming up next. And I don't know, like it's crazy because you can just make stuff that you would never be able to make before. You can take like the smallest, most trivial inside joke, and you can give it like, the effects of a Hollywood movie 5 years ago. And it'll cost you maybe €10 of compute. So it's fun. Like I think that I never really considered myself an artist before, because I couldn't paint, I couldn't draw. Those were like the kind of like main barriers that I was like, wow, I'm not an artist because I can't make something pretty with my hands. And now with AI, I think you can. Like, I think that they're probably like the most powerful high leverage tools for at least anything visual right now or anything creative right now. So I've just enjoyed messing around with things that would have seemed completely impossible 5 years ago.
Absolutely, and messing around is, like, I think, to put it lightly, because your outputs are bonkers, like things that the world has never seen, which is extremely impressive. But I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit about the process in a little bit. Anna, you are our curator in the house here. How are you doing? I know a bit about you, and we've spent a lot of time over the past few days installing and recording and documenting an exhibition that went on for 48 hours, and here you are online. Tell us a bit about
hello, hi. Sorry.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm at first I'm not sure if I would call myself curator, because this was like one of the first shows ever I was curating. Normally I just see myself as an artist, so.
Mhm.
And yeah, my connection to AI is also like very short, I would say. But I also studied photography, and especially history of photography, and I'm really interested in this conflict, like or people call it conflict between like AI and artificial intelligence and the art, because this conflict is kind of similar to the one which happened after the photography was invented. And it was like, exactly like you said before, like suddenly there is a machine you can use to make art. And then there was like this whole bunch of people who kept saying this is not art, for like 60 years until now we see photography as art. And I see some like similarities between this conflict and between like the discussion at that time and the discussion about AI now, which is why it's becoming like more and more interesting for me. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And you probably had, I guess you probably had some unique, I would say, unique challenges getting artists together for an exhibition when it comes to specifically artists that are developing this medium.
Yeah, like the topic kind of came out from the topic of the festival, because this exhibition was part of the festival 48 hours Neukölln, and the common topic for the festival was this: what the fact, like this questioning of reality. And then Ismail, who was like the second curator of the show, came up with this idea about doing the ChatGPT party.
Mhm.
And after that, I had the idea to like create an exhibition about like exhibition made by AI. But of course, like the point was more or less like to show that even if you like let the artist use AI for creating all the art pieces, you still see that you need the artist, like I can maybe talk about it later a little bit more.
For sure,
About the
absolutely.
process.
Yeah, it turned out it's turned out extremely well, and I think it was really well received. And yeah, I made some new friends, and also spent like many hours explaining to people who just sort of happened in off the street about what is going on here. So it's all pretty fresh in my brain and still churning around. Meylen, how are you? Hello. Welcome. We haven't had you up in Creators Guild. You've been around in our creative spaces like for a while now, and you're really busy in many different ways. And you also are like, I think you're just like, yeah, learning a lot of angles of Web3 that I think are just flying over people's heads. But as a creative, and especially as somebody who's like, I would say actively engaged in the space in many different ways, please introduce yourself on your own terms.
Thank you very much, Paul. Yes, I'm a multi-passionate. I like to be everywhere and learning from every angle that I can. But regarding this specific one, so I am a designer. I am an advocate for women to use new technologies with confidence. Main will be Web3, but then also AI plays such a big role that everyone, when I say like, oh yes, the next phase of the internet, Web3, they're like, is that AI? I'm like, okay, yes, it could be, but it's not there yet. So it's a little bit complicated to explain. So that's like a little bit of my bridge, like the AI into Web3 that could be decentralized. But anyway, so yes, I've been using AI for a little while now, just mainly for exploration and as a contribution to my design. So I am a designer, I have my own branding, I have my own tone, my colors and everything. And I always wanted to explore many different styles that my Photoshop skills are lacking. So I was like, okay, I need to get Midjourney, and it's going to help me to create this super futuristic, realistic, ultra modern shapes, scenarios, everything. So for me, AI, it's a great tool to use, and not as a whole thing, right? Because I know some people might, and I understand, Frank, I have a lot of friends that are so against AI and Web3 and everything. And I understand where you're coming from, because you are used to do everything by hand. And me too, as a designer, I used to do everything by hand. And then of course, Adobe came, and then now AI. So it's like just adjusting to everything we have. And AI, I think it's a great tool to use as a contribution or as a part of your own work, because I mean, we can tell when it's only AI, and it kind of loses that uniqueness that you're like, yes, I mean, you can just have a nice prompt and then it can generate this beautiful image. So I try to have a balance between what I do for my design work and what I do for AI. So I think balance is key.
Balance is an excellent, I feel like that's an excellent way of describing probably just probably what anyone who has any sort of, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say sense of creative integrity, but like bringing yourself and staying yourself and properly and faithfully translating yourself into new mediums with new mediums into new forms of work, right? I'm wondering, so a few things keep reoccurring. I've heard people say Photoshop a few times already. Also photography, but I think Photoshop, it's a funny thing to bring up Photoshop, because anybody who's probably been making and manipulating images for a while now, Photoshop might have been something that really broke the barrier between an image and infinite choices with image making and composition. And composition itself is also another, I think, a completely different animal. But I think of course AI is going to be a way you can sort of draft and hash out compositions. But yeah, any noticeable I think noticeable leaps and bounds in the ways you are working with these powerful new tools. Who finds them? I get, so I spent like about, I don't know, maybe even a year and a half, not even wanting to use these things, because I just felt kind of like I wanted to wait and see and watch. And I was also intimidated, honestly. Like as an artist, you're just like, wait, but I'm me. I do my thing. I have my aesthetic. I have my ideas that translate from ideas into the physical world. And then now anybody can do that in their own way. So yeah. Any thoughts on first approaches and sort of maybe how you got to where you are now on your journey? If you're actually using, I mean, everybody's using it, but if you're using it in a way that like maybe challenges your creative self or threatens your creative self, or maybe you hear other people's, I don't know, creative selves being threatened in a way.
I think it's very scary. Everything new, right? That you're trying to use everything. It's like a learning curve. Like for a lot of the platforms in Web3, it's a lot of learning. So it's intimidating. And not that you mentioned, for example, Photoshop, that people who use to craft these beautiful images. And for me, I just have a nice prompt and I can get the same image. It could be frustrating. So I understand that point as well, that I think for me, it was just talking to people and understand their process and see where I could add more of that into me, but without losing my humanness, and just seeing it as something that it can help us instead of taking completely our role, I would say.
Yeah, the sort of like, I think somebody already said like kind of bringing the impossible or making the impossible happen, which I think is also super amazing. In a lot of ways, when it came to even something as simple as animation, if anybody's ever done hand done animation, it takes a ton of time, and I love the result. But if you just want to sort of even test something out without really dedicating weeks to the process of hand animating something, then it can be like a real windfall. Travi, I have a question in terms of process, because I know in the moments where I've had, like, I would say, some time to ask you about process, your process, without giving away, I don't know if you want to, if you consider it sort of like a secret, or not like a secret, but like maybe you got your secret sauce. In terms of process, is there any sort of hints, or even just like a sort of like an overview of how you've cooked up your own process in terms of getting to where you want to be?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, just with the nature of these tools, my process has changed because, new, better options have kind of popped up. But basically what it boils down to, I really love Midjourney. I sometimes mess around with some other things like ChatGPT image, or some other specialist ones for edge cases. But I usually start with Midjourney, and then go with whatever video program is working the best. Midjourney's V1 is actually quite good. Kling has been a favorite of mine. Yeah, it's really good. VO3 I have not messed around with that much, because it seems like, I like to go with like image to video personally. But yeah, basically, like, I'll take the video and then I will make music, usually with Suno, which is the AI music platform, and then 11 Labs for audio, and then just kind of throw everything together.
I think one super interesting thing that I heard you say is that, if you happen to be doing a project for somebody else, you've kind of got like a really substantial rendering time, and if you want to make a change, then that change, what does that look like in terms of like the result that you are seeking and the sort of rendering times, and then basically, I say, like, forking that. Can you even fork like a prompt? Is it even possible to alter something from a certain point, or do you have to completely redo your work if it needs to be like tweaked, for example, for output?
Yeah. I mean, it depends the extent of it. But the thing is, most of this is done in like very short little, like, 4-second, 8-second things. So in that way, like, if you kind of stay on top of where the direction you're going, make sure everything's consistent, then it's not too bad. It's not like it's getting better every day too. Like, Midjourney's video model is super fast. So yeah, it's becoming less and less of an issue, which makes sense. I assume these things are going to be incredible in a couple months.
This is a very good point. I think within the brief amount of time that we've seen them emerge and be publicly available and usable to where we're at right now, even month to month can make a huge difference. Frank, I'm curious. So in terms of like we've had photography and Photoshop come up. In terms of staying true to a painterly or a drawing practice, an artistic practice, whether it's for you or for other, your students or things that you might recommend. Do you see this being true to any part of the, I think, traditional artistic education? Are there recommendations or shortcuts, or if students are already using them, how are you reacting to that? What does that look like to you as an arts educator?
Yeah, I mean, I see it completely as a conceptual sort of framework.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the use of prompts, or is in especially in something like Midjourney, is really just it really easily translates in my mind to being conceptual, like prompts, like
Mm-hmm.
or even what is that stuff called? Oh gosh, I'm blanking, but so I don't really see it as very different at all. I think that in terms of like traditional painting, I sort of agree with the previous comment that the sort of digital stuff and the Web3 stuff is merely just like the camera was in the 1890s or something for painting, where you it's sort of just reassesses how you see images, how images are made. I think it's sort of very, sort of retrograde to sort of think about like some kind of like separation between like, oh, this works one way and this works another way. I do take a lot of solace in knowing that other people have trouble maneuvering through the Web3 space. Just the level of sort of steps that you have to sort of understand in order to sort of make something for the public. And it's sort of easy to get on Midjourney and kind of make like some testers or something for yourself and turn that into a video and that kind of thing. But the process of sort of taking that into like a public sphere or a monetized sphere, I think is complicated and always changing. And so I feel like to me anyway, in terms of being an instructor for that kind of thing and almost like a Luddite professor, old man type, I think that the sort of processes of understanding the scaffolding for that kind of work in its presentation publicly, I think is sort of the one thing that to me seems to be the hardest part to understand and to be able to wrap my head around. And I think it's specifically because it's always changing, right? Like there's no place like where that I can sort of stop and okay, this is how it works from now on, that kind of thing. I do have a question for Travi though, if I may. Just because I'm curious, just as sort of somebody that's done it before and somebody that's like, what would you say was the sort of the moment or the space where you understood a switch in grammar of your prompts, giving you something that you really liked, or something that sort of changed where it ended up? Because I always find that sort of little node, that moment, to be sort of interesting for people to to sort of talk about.
Sort of a breakthrough moment, huh?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, one thing that I really like about Midjourney is you can kind of lean on the tools they have built in. Like lean on referencing other images, referencing styles, now referencing the characters and stuff. So for me, like a lot of the unlocks have come from like, hey, like I'll do the similar prompt and I will put a different reference image behind it, or I'll put a different style reference behind it. So that's actually been an interesting one for me. But then other than that, it's just been like pushing through as many as I can, and kind of, I'll change this part of the sentence, and then the next time I'll change this part of the sentence, and just going through that. It takes more time, but it's not crazy, like the speed that you can make these things is wild. So sometimes give it an extra 5 minutes to like put a few different combinations has paid off.
Patience. Perseverance. Holy cow. Anna, I'm curious. So based on maybe what Frank said in terms of like the scaffolding and the sorts of ways that you were seeing, because you saw a lot of AI assisted or AI based artwork recently, probably more. Given the amount of exhibitions. By the way, there was we have show flyer. There's one of I don't know how many 150 exhibitions this past weekend, all throughout our very large neighborhood of Berlin, all having to do with in some way, shape, or form to the relationship between fact and where we are at now with whatever reality has morphed into. So in terms of your relationship with arranging, bringing on artists and curation, and the sorts of works that you're seeing emerging. Any thoughts and reactions about all of that?
Well, the start of it was really interesting, I think, because it just came to me like an idea after Ismail said that we should organize this ChatGPT party, I was like, wow, we just make an exhibition which is all made by AI. And I called a few friends of mine, artists, and I asked them what they think about the idea. And they didn't like it so much. They were like, oh, maybe it's like not too interesting, and we don't like the AI. And there was like a lot of discussion, a lot of comments, and I would like talk to each other for like 1 hour and like very like critical. And then on the end of the discussion, I would always ask like, would you like to participate on such exhibition? And they always said yes. So there was these 4 people who came to the exhibition. You know, like Heshma was there, Arto, my friend from the art academy in Czech Republic. They were like, on the one side they were like very critical, and on the other side they were like, oh yes, I want to do it. Let's do it. It's a nice challenge for me. And there was also the discussion with Eric, who made one of the most beautiful things, like art pieces on the exhibition, and the exhibition took 3 days. Like 3 days we were exhibiting, and I think Eric spent like 2 weeks making the piece just for this exhibition. But on the beginning, when I asked him to participate, and I told him about the topic, he was also very like, oh, I don't know, I don't have anything. And then at one point, like after all the meetings, he came to me and he was like, you know, Anna, I actually don't like AI. And I was like, Eric, no one likes it, you know. I told him like of course we are all very critical to it, but that's how we work with it as artists. So and on the end he made something which was like super beautiful, this video.
I agree. I think probably Eric's piece, and if I can just describe it briefly, it was a series of it was generated from a series of 24 childhood photographs that were brought to life, and then I would say in some ways it is very grainy, almost like, you know, absolutely convincing. It looked like a Super 8 footage, and it got a little strange here and there, and I think I had to watch it 3 times, and it was extremely moving. I think it definitely it makes the case for using these tools in a authentic way, translating your artistic self into a really just absolutely wild sort of new reality that I think everybody that saw that piece was extremely impressed. Eric is editing his video in Munich right now, or his film. He's editing a film in Munich right now, so he wasn't able to join. We're probably going to try to have him on next round, but like totally fascinating work. I think there's one. I think maybe there's it kind of reminds me of maybe a honeymoon phase you have with new options or new tools versus like starting to kind of maybe master them to the point where people are really swept up in what you're doing. And I think I've seen that in Travi's work too, where you're like, okay, like he's tweaking, he's playing around with it to the point where it kind of breaks through and it becomes this composition that is like kind of a journey. But yeah, I'm wondering, like, in terms of, and this is an open question to anyone, but in terms of the point where you go from tinkering and experimenting it to the point where it can be melded with your creative self. If anybody has had any moments, and I can kind of, I still feel like I'm on the edge with that. And also, of course, because all these things are constantly coming out, newer, better versions are coming out. But yeah, I mean, obviously, maintaining authenticity, I think, in this realm is extremely tricky. But yeah, if anyone has any little anecdotes about, like, I don't know, staying true to themselves in the use of technology, particularly in the use of these technologies, would be super curious. Any takers on that one? You're like,
well, in our exhibition, if I can come back to it,
Yeah.
I think what was like very clear, there were these two positions. No, there was like Eric,
Yeah.
who used AI, but also AI was a topic of his work because
Yeah.
it was that like the point of the work, or like this first idea he had was
Yeah.
like, I will use these childhood videos and I would change them with the AI, and there was this idea behind it that this is something that can actually happen. You know, like we have this very powerful technology which can actually change like the reality so much that it's like
Yeah.
backwards change our memories. So he was
Yeah.
like changing the memories, and like there was this real power of the art piece was in, like, for myself, was in like it, like aesthetically it was all like super beautiful, you know, like there was this child playing with the snowman, and then suddenly the snowman would like move, and you would think like this is like the dream the child has, or like the wish it has. But behind like all those super beautiful dreamy images was this like super creepy scary idea of like technology changing our memories, right? And then also like there was this one part, like those artists who would use AI as, you know, like it's their topic, and like criticize it or like talk about it. And there were like other artists like Arthur or Pejman Burka, who would like completely use AI just as tool. Like like no, they were not really like referring to the technology of it, or to the topic of AI. They would just already use it as, like, if you use photography, you know, like if you use photography in art piece, you don't necessarily refer to whole history of photography. You can do it, but you don't have to anymore because photography is like very common these days. And I saw that this is like what something was coming to, or what was like very clearly to see on the exhibition.
Yeah, I'm wondering if anybody has ever attempted to train any kind of AI on their own work, or even in the case of just your own creative work, like training AI on your own. Okay, for example, we had a wild comment from Glowburger, who's a 3D artist recently. She said that she had trained AI on all of her journals that she wrote from her youth, so that she could then talk to it and ask advice from her former self, which was like completely blew my mind. Very conceptual in a lot of ways. Wasn't even necessarily an art piece, but maybe will be. But I'm just curious, if anybody's had any leads or any success or any interesting moments training AI on things that they've already done, and how that's sort of panned out.
I have a, I mean, doesn't sound as poignant as putting your whole journals into the AI, but
I mean, that's intense.
yeah, that's serious. So I've been really fascinated with images of people in mirrors, kind of through Lacan's philosophy. So I one day just decided to sort of take a bunch of Lacan text, and by a bunch I mean like half of a book, and put it in as a prompt, and the result was not good. So it really kind of I really started to wonder about like the amount of direction that I was giving and that kind of thing. So I would say that's the sort of closest I came into. And the thing that I haven't done yet, which is sort of my summer project, is to then bring in my older images of mirrored, paintings with mirrors in them, as sort of the possibility to sort of rummage through what ended up happening.
Yeah, I mean the possibility to bring, I think, breathe life into works that were sort of created, works that exist. This is also, I think, extremely fascinating. I mean, in the creative cycles, especially anybody who's been, changed hard drives and computers every 3 to 5 years. You end up with just a lot of past work that you dedicated time and energy to. Maybe it wasn't good enough for the light of day, but honestly, experimenting, I think, with these tools, with sort of past selves or past creative selves, or work that was sort of brought to a point, but could be brought much further, is actually really interesting territory. I've done a bit of that. The result has actually been kind of surprising and cool, but beyond cool, not always. Yeah, there's still that point. There's still that point where you want it to be actually the thing that you're doing. I like the fact that people have identified several times now the work, that the result not being the whole thing. And I think in terms of balance, or balancing out the amount of let's say output that is actually you versus actually just the machine. I mean, I had to, let me put it this way. In my first attempt to create work that will be seen publicly last weekend, I think I had to kind of trash about 80% of the output. And I know, Travi, you've probably said that these tools are getting so much better. What would you say? Yeah, what would you say is the percentage of output that you're actually satisfied with, or that you feel is this is working for me?
like 1% maybe, zero. Yeah, 0.69 tops.
What? 1%? See, this is where
a lot of it is
room for opposition. Meylen, how about I don't know, in terms of how much you actually how much time you actually inputting versus the part that you actually want to share with the world. What are your results?
I think I'm going to go back to the question you asked about the AI agent, right? That is my dream, to create one. But it's maybe more in the fastening the process that I'm not that good at. So as a designer, I have to produce a lot of things, a lot of communication. So I will say that, I would like to train an AI agent for that. And going back again with the balance, and it's just like when you use ChatGPT and you ask for a question and it gives you already know which words are using and which words are yours or not. So it's that key, it's that point to be don't lose the humane, instead be grounded and use it as your advantage to the things that you're not too strong at, and maybe you can just continue exploring on the side or something like that, I would say.
Yeah, the agent. Has anybody? I mean, I tried to properly build an agent, but as a non-technical kind of a developer, I found it to be, I think the learning curve was a bit too steep. But as we've said, even with something like no code, for example, no code options, there are definitely one thing that emerged, because before we had this exhibition, we just went through 2+ weeks of Berlin Blockchain Week. I popped in on, I would say, at least 2 hackathons that involved AI agents, that were totally involving AI agent work. I think for developers at this point, for people that are properly technical, something like an AI agent is going to be a breeze. But I think at least at this moment, I've yet to find an easy way to teach oneself as a creative to actually really build an AI agent that would help you with your creative work. But I wouldn't doubt that they are out there, and I also wouldn't doubt that people are already building them. Most likely, first off, probably Meylen, probably for purposes of communication, I would say. And I say communication every time I mean okay, maybe marketing, or we've also used the term sharing lore. But I think that also reminds me, I think with every round of new technology, has anybody specifically used a tool not for the purpose that it has been intended, and actually taken that and ran with it? Because I'm reminded of I went to a lecture of David Burns probably in the early 2000s, and he was at that point using PowerPoint as an artistic medium, and he filled an entire sold out auditorium of people just to show. I mean, he's obviously a a really well known personality, but like everybody was quite entertained. It sort of was, in a way, I think everybody sort of accepted it as like some kind of primitive sort of interactive visual digital art. But yeah, are there any tools that you've used not for their intended purpose and ended up with a really interesting outcome in terms of your own experimentation or part of your learning journey?
Yeah, I like to use 11 Labs sound effect feature and try to get people to say things.
11 Labs sound effect. I'm gonna start making. 11 Labs.
Yeah, so they have like voice cloning stuff, and like they're very good at that. But then they also have a sound effect feature, and if you try to get it to say stuff like speak, it gives you some wild results, like just like strange voices and kind of like weird AI gibberish. So I really like that.
Yeah. At what point? Okay, so like this is actually I think the kinds of glitches and the kinds of things that we've come to like, the mind-boggling things that these tools will return back to us, which technically are part of like a bigger pool of human information, right? I think one of the things that remains, it's cool, these things are interesting, but I think one of the running threads in terms of like not having it be gimmicky and also being able to infuse like interesting and bizarre things with meaning, and also like sort of the further trajectory of that, because like, I don't know, Frank, maybe have you seen anybody kind of go off the rails and like it's a difficult time to, I think, sort of like keep your anchor down when it comes to like.
I mean, I think the weirdest one that I saw was it was just a sort of simple VR painting thing, and so the student had the sort of paddles or handles or whatever you call them, and was creating sort of these sort of 3D sort of brush strokes in a space. It was a very blank space, but the result, which was nice. It was sort of like a fun experiment, but they took their foot movements and turned that into another graphic. So that would be the only thing that I feel like kind of qualifies in this round of like sort of taking the thing out of context. But to make it even sort of sillier, they made an intaglio print of the footsteps, and Paul can attest to the significance of the, I don't know, these are sort of the diagrams of how to do dance steps, where like you put your 2 feet and you put foot here. And so on the main street in Seattle on Broadway, there are these bronze sort of dance steps embedded into the sidewalk. And so that was the sort of connection.
Okay.
But again, sort of, I mean, really bringing it retrograde back to, what is it, intaglio and bronze casting. I mean, I don't know if there are any older art references that we can sort of talk about other than the charcoal drawing at this point.
I mean, I haven't thought about intaglio for a while. Yeah, I mean, I think sorry, I just got totally got sent off on a mission there. But yeah, just in terms of we did a whole talk about multiples and additions, and and then that kind of segued into like the use of Photoshop as an image making tool. But I've got kind of like a final question, and it's a 2-part question, and that's I know Travi, you have mentioned Midjourney, Kling AI, Sunio, the music one, Suno, Suno.
Suno.
Suno. Okay, and 11 Labs. I myself started on Hugging Face just because I have no idea why. It was open source. There was a bunch of weird stuff. I probably wasted a lot of time on there. I also made the mistake of not crediting AI and therefore discrediting myself when I uploaded to a digital platform. So I got banned for a while, which is super fun. Does anybody have any qualms or interesting experiences in terms of accreditation? I mean, it's one of these things where I don't know. We to a certain point we were raised in a world where people actually got credit for their work. I know, for example, in the UK right now, there's a lot of stuff going on with musicians and AI and laws and all this. I don't know if anybody has any sort of like feelings on or even hard facts on the relationship between accreditation results. I don't know, like even like I would say ethics in terms of like using tools that are, if there are tools out there that are more likely to tap Creative Commons images. I'm not aware of any, but maybe you can tweak some to do that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely weird territory. I don't know how it's going to pan out. I don't know if images are going to get watermarks and be trackable. I've heard that these tools are actually maybe in development, maybe out there, maybe will be released at some point, so that we can't just be using anything anywhere all the time, or we're taking people's voices or taking people's images. But yeah, any thoughts in terms of like how you're interacting with that, or your experience with that? I mean, it's really weird territory. It's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of yeah, it's one of probably a myriad, maybe one of the lesser concerns in terms of ethics and the way we interact with AI. But I'm imagining it'll have to pan out eventually. But Greg, do you ever have issues with that, with kids and accreditation, or rights to use? Or
I mean, just internal, I would say. I think it's sort of like it's kind of like a philosophical question, I think, for us as educators. Like, are we encouraging them to sample or take from other sources? I mean, I've never heard of anybody getting sort of banned for some kind of accreditation issue. And honestly, like, and surprisingly, I haven't heard of kids sort of nicking things from each other. That really hasn't happened either. Which is what I thought. That's what I initially thought about, was like, oh, has there ever been like an issue where, well, that was my idea, or that was the thing that I wanted to do, just sort of internally within the students.
Do you think it's because they have such a massively broad pool to draw from, or like
I think there's a certain value for originality that like is sort of inherent at that, especially at that age where they're sort of trying to sort of form their own sort of stylistic sort of moves and their own sort of oeuvre along the couple of years. I think that sort of takes precedent, and they really try to avoid copying or looking similar to other people. I think that's a real motivating factor. Which when I was in art school, I think copying people was kind of more a little bit like something you did as a gag. Like you would sort of troll someone by making a painting in their style. Which is, if you sort of equate it to sort of like a rap battle or something, has a little bit more resonance.
Nice.
But I think I don't know. We were just there were too many Marxists in the faculty for us to not sort of have sort of some kind of like lashing out of copying each other.
I do. I actually, you just remind me, like in your, I remember in terms of the subjects that you have covered traditionally are also included military elements, military activity, military actions. I'm actually wondering if artificial intelligence has sort of sparked that kind of conversation or that theme
Yeah.
again in terms of your work, because
Yeah.
it's so well integrated into military technology.
Yeah,
well,
like data imaging has been
Yeah.
something that I'm really sort of interested in right now, like
Yeah.
data imaging and through radar and through, you know, just sort of like those. I don't know. There's some really great sort of videos I've seen of this sort of integrated sort of Wi-Fi integrated soldier stuff. You know, like so you can sort of see them like it's a video game. You know, like the sort of the field of battle becomes this sort of like two-dimensional, you know, chessboard with the, you know, sort of the people sort of moving around and stuff. I feel like that the sort of data imaging around that I think is really interesting. But I mean, you know, for me it's the close. It's I think and the connection to you know, I never said this in the beginning, but my work kind of is about Chicano like clothing and culture and the nexus with World War II surplus in Southern California.
Okay, I did not know about this.
Yeah,
Meylen, maybe that rings true a bit there.
I love it. Yeah, I'm Chicana.
Oh yeah. No, we definitely talked. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it takes me back to the school days that they were saying like, yeah, when you are an artist and designer, you take inspiration from everyone, from every artist you can take from, but then you make it your own. But then how can you do that with AI, right? Like a prompt, like make this like this artist, like this artist. Like how would that make sense in this new technology, right? Like it's something to think about.
You ended up prompting yourself with a lifetime of cramming your brain with all this stuff, right? And like, that's the what ends up being in reality and what ends up going back in to be prompted and reprompted and reprompted. Yeah, it's I mean, I even think of dreaming, like what the heck your brain is doing when it's dreaming, like this just totally weird engine of like producing strange new realities or boring new realities. But everyone, I thank you so much for your time. I actually open it up to any kind of closing statements anybody wants to make, or especially also any hot tips that you have in terms of like any artists that we should know about, any exhibitions we should know about. Always super welcome to share that out, because basically there's so much information going on that like I have a very hard time these days keeping everything straight. But one thing I did want to do really quick is just go through a little slideshow of some of our past topics that will hopefully kind of guide us to the future. We did like I said on additions. I really love this one. We had some of our local creators. Actually, everybody was Berlin based in this one, which is amazing. Actually, just talking about additions, because I think one of the things that is sort of always my mind keeps returning to in terms of the way digital work is released these days. How many are there? Is it one of one? Is it infinite? Is it what's the rarity on this thing, or is it just sort of how do we make these decisions? That went really well. Why Web3 art to begin with? Frank, you were almost there on this one. We had Rahim of the NFT Biennale. He's gone on to win a bunch of hackathons. I just saw him the other day. Sylvia is awesome. She's based in Iran right now, so I haven't heard from her lately, but I want to check in. Rez, he super awesome guy. Everybody please have a look at Rez's work. He's like a very prolific guy. And tools and animation. We talked about a bunch of tools and animation. Festival, of course, with Trev, also DJ and Ghosty, who actually has opened up her own work so that other people can prompt in her style, which is a super interesting tool. I was like really into that. Art collecting and process. We will revisit this theme with, I think, some proper art world people in the near future. Artist Fire Relief Resources. We shared out about our sister city, LA, and all the issues that artists were having there because they'd lost a lot. Hope things are going better now. But yeah, I've myself have a lot of close connections to LA. And our NFT Paris takeaways. I love this show. Didn't really go into AI, but we talked about everything that we saw there. And then creatives and hackathons, which we obviously just had a series of hackathons. We will always be revisiting this theme because there's always room for creatives and hackathons, especially in terms of AI. And I will point this out to Unify Giving. I was helping out a recent project with their 3D assets. And after 2 or 3 days, they no longer needed my help because basically they were just able to produce their own 3D assets with Meshy AI. So that was pretty amazing. It's like all those hours I spent in Blender were suddenly I don't want to say useless, but I was happy to see somebody be independent with AI tools. So and I think we'll be having an open call to in the near future for our crazy metaverse space. We've had 2 exhibitions in this space before we started doing this show as a video online. I really love this space. Anything's possible. Like, I don't even know what's going to happen when it comes to AI tools and virtual environments, but this was a kinetic sculpture. That's my head inside the kinetic sculpture. We're going to open this up again and sort of get it going again in the near future. So keep an eye out. I will be sharing out about that. And co-working Fridays for anybody in Berlin. Meylen brings her dog, which is amazing. We try to meet on Fridays. Sometimes there are 2 of us, sometimes there are 20 of us, sometimes we're too tired to talk, but yeah, we hang out and check in and try to wrap our heads around all this stuff. So the next one is July 4th at 10, so swing on by W3 Hub. We are around. And Island DAO, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Island DAO. Travi, maybe you've heard of Island DAO. This is a very supportive technical community. They have just opened their applications to Island DAO 3. So go ahead and check in on that. You can apply to Island DAO, which means you spend a chunk of time on Mykonos hanging out with some really awesome, cool, smart people in the Solana ecosystem. So we just spoke to Legend of Realms DAO, a governance DAO. I think we might even try to do this for our Creators Guild in Berlin. So we have a DAO because, yeah, we need some structure. It always helps. And that's all I got here, except I was just going to reference that one thing. This is my failed attempt here at building an AI agent for creative stuff with Bita AI. Gonna get back on it. But if anybody comes up with any tools which might be useful for building an AI agent to possibly forward your creative career, whatever it is, yeah, please feel free to share them out. I've got one last suggestion, and that's Trev Viz, our buddy who's been on the show many times. Trev is talking trash right about now over in his space over there. So I'm going to migrate over there. Everybody, thank you again, and thank you so much for showing up and sharing out your worldly knowledge. And yeah, please feel free to spam us with anything that we need to know about. In fact, if there's anything we need to know about, please let me know right now.
Thank you so much for your time, and nice to meet you all.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Okay. All right.
Thank
Until
Bye-bye.
next time. Cheers. Ciao.